Chair, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Hank. Call to order. City of Huntington Woods Zoning Board of Appeals. This is the October 10th, 2022 meeting. First thing on the agenda is an approval of the agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Mr. Chair, the minutes portion of that, I'm going to have to ask for a deferral as we don't have a minutes converter. And right now we're looking at exploring possibilities of combining with Berkeley or another situation. But I don't have any minutes to present for you this evening.
So do I need a motion to defer?
We need a motion
Okay.
to defer a second.
I'll make the motion to defer last month's meeting to next month, November.
The minutes.
Defer the minutes.
The minutes, yes, not the meeting. We are here, and we were there then.
We're ready to go and we've had.
Yes, no, deferring the approval of the minutes
Thank you.
Second.
till November.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Now we move on to the appeals. The first one, appeal from Brian Howard on behalf of the Paul family, 26361 Dundee for a variance from section 40-4.03, R1A through R1E, one family districts, dimensional requirements of 448 square feet, requesting 4104 where 3656 is allowed for an addition to the house, as well as a variance from section 40-10.10, fences, hedges, and walls, G, to allow a fence in a side yard connecting to the house further forward than the midpoint of the house. Mr. Howard.
I just want to pass out some photos. I don't know if anybody have a chance to run by there. But
Just for the record, please always try to speak into the microphone. If you're not at a microphone, nobody can hear you. And that's
Okay.
how our minutes go.
fair enough.
Thank you.
Was this one in there? In there? Oh, okay. Yep, that's the one I wanted to show you. Thank you this evening. My name is Brian Howard, and I have Shar Paul here tonight as well. When Bob and Shar came to me to ask them to design an addition for their house, being on a double lot, being 14,000 square feet, we really tried very hard and desperately to minimize this addition on this house. And most of the addition, as you can see on the site plan and the drawings you have in front of you, occurs behind the house. And so where I'd like to start my presentation is really to talk about the 100-foot width of property that we have. And fortunately enough, our existing house is so far down to the south end of our property that we had quite a bit of land to the north of us to work with. But we also were very conscious of trying to not make this look like two houses or make it look like a house and a half. So we minimized what you see from the street, from Dundee, as well as we even stepped the house in two different directions as we move from south to north from the addition. We're set back 12 and a half feet back from the front of the house as you move from east to west. And then the next addition steps back another 11 feet beyond that. When you take a relationship of the width of our house and the width of the addition, we're a total of 64 feet of length of house, 36 and 28. So we are actually 64% of filling our void or filling the facade of the street. As well as you can see where that north setback line is, we're nowhere near that setback line. So the maximum house size of I think it's 3656, and we're asking for the 448 variance to expand beyond that. Most of that does occur behind the house, but it also occurs on the second floor, which we are not putting any second floor on the north side of the addition. That's all a single-story addition. We do have access to a balcony or a porch off the master bedroom on the second floor, but it's not livable space up there. The main reason behind this addition is that Bob and Char, Bob's parents are very old. There's a chance that they're going to be coming to live with them. So we really tried to design this project as an age-in-place project, both for Bob's parents, but then obviously down the road for Bob and Char themselves. So we developed a master suite on the main floor, which most of it is on that north end of that addition. The addition off the west or the back is expansion of kitchen. It's an expansion of powder room, nook area, spaces like that. We also, if you notice on the site plan, we also incorporated a ramp from the driveway garage area up to our patio. We're having zero clearance to get into the house from the back of the house. So the age in place is really very why this is kind of spearheaded itself to be designed the way that it is. If I also can discuss that we looked at trying to push and pull the addition as much as we could to, again, try not to increase beyond the maximum house size any more than we had to. The 448 really has stemmed from just the ability to be able to create a master suite, to create an addition. I mean, this house is quite small in its current footprint. And so by putting this addition on, it really kind of minimized itself in the sense that once I get a bedroom, bathroom, we have a little seating area, living room kind of off of the master to almost create like its own master suite, i.e. like a hotel room, for instance. But then also the expansion of a kitchen that is more usable to the way people live today. Their kitchen is very small. I'm sure Char can attest to that. And so it's really kind of for purposes of being able to live in this house for the next 25, 30 years is really where this whole project has kind of morphed from. As I stated, the ramp on the exterior, the back side of the house, there's a 30-inch grade change between driveway and first floor of the house. And so to get up in a wheelchair or a walker, that really meant that we had to, pull that whole back patio up, which hence incorporated the ramp into this design. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I think Hank might have a couple things to add to this.
Thank you. Hank?
I've got a few, and of course, Mr. Howard would be welcome to answer any questions or any concerns that anybody might have. Basically, let me turn off the lights so that everybody can. Yeah, so what we're looking at here on the screen is, and I'm going to go in reverse order because I'm going to talk about the fence, and then I'll get to the addition. Right here is where the fence is proposed. Right here is where it is right now. So what they want to do is, they still want a fence. They have a fence. They could keep that fence. But what they want to do is create a better space and allow for a walkway here. So they want to pull the fence back. So actually what you're looking at is lessening the grandfathered fence that they have now, putting it at this corner of the new addition. And that's something that, it's a lesser variance and a higher quality fence, ornamental fence, brick columns, limestone caps. It's a high-end fence. Whether that means anything or not, it means that the more dilapidated fence towards the front would be going away in favor of a smaller, dimensionally fenced this way, and a further from the street, which is out here, fence from that way. So the realities of this are, and let me just show you here, this right here now shows you where your sidewalks are and everything. So, that's really the fence issue, and we can get to that and come back and talk about that, but it's a lesser of what they have now. So they're not asking for more, they're asking for less. So that's kind of an interesting thing, because we don't often see.
And the issue is it's too far back?
The issue with this is that even at this location, it's still too far forward of where it
Okay.
technically could be.
Okay.
So what you're looking at is you're looking at a fence that does not meet code, but it meets code a whole lot more than this does.
Okay, okay.
So it's one of those type of things where it's a lesser, they don't have a variance for the first one, it's just been there forever. This one is one of those things where it's a lesser variance if the two were on equal footing. So that can kind of put that. But now while we're talking to that, let's also talk about the house and the variance for the house. So before I get into the size, let's talk a little bit about the setting. If you take a look at this area here, which is the original house portion that they're adding on to, the house was one of the standard two-story brick colonials, and it didn't have all the amenities and sizes inside like we would. In the interior layout, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Howard, but that was pretty broken up.
It is.
So
It's very broken.
in order to correct that, and in order to keep bearing on a lot of this, you have to go into different spaces and create different spaces, still keeping in mind bearing points, and that does account for some of the space. What they've done is that they've taken this, and instead of just building a big box on the side of the house, there was some architectural thought, and I'll get into the elevations because I believe they do play a point with this. And the setback here is significantly more than the setback here. You're looking at 39 feet, 40 feet is what the setback would be there, so they're 39.9. And then now you're looking at this right here, and the setback here to the new portion of the house is approximately 53 feet. And then you're looking at the setback to the existing fence, and that's 45 feet roughly. So you've got roughly 8 feet further back for that particular fence. So how does that play into all of this? Number one, it creates a front here. It creates an architectural break in the features here, and the second elevation is stepped back. Yet there's still 27.1 feet from the property line on this side. And then the bulk of the addition goes around to the back. So when the planning commission looked at this, they looked for a couple things. They looked to see, okay, what about the bulk of this? Are we creating something that would be obtrusive? Are we creating something that would be problematic visually with this? And they decided no. And I do want to point out that this did pass the planning commission unanimously. I'm going to come back to this one, but I want to go to another, let's see if this is it here. Okay, so here's the first floor plan. So what you're looking at here, let me see if I can, this always goes to 26.6 and you can't see anything, so I apologize, but we'll get this up here. Okay, so this shows the first floor addition. So what are we adding here? Okay, we're adding a first floor master, and this right here goes with a new kitchen off the back. Take a look at the spaces that you have over here. You've got doorways that are wider, a lot of room here, a lot of room in the new master bath, and a new sitting room with a TV up front. So what does that equate to? A lot of times stuff like that, even though it's not exactly ADA dimensions, it creates more room for people that do want to age in place on the first floor. So they'll have more room. We're going to hope that there's no need for a wheelchair, but in the case that there is, he's even incorporated pocket doors into here to make it easier, because that door will slide back into the wall, so there's no swings to worry about in that. So this is part of the ease and aging plan. So what are you seeing from the front of this? Right here, you're seeing a nice bank of windows. There's more windows than wall on this particular elevation. Here we have more wall than windows, but this, when looking at this, presents a wall like this that still is over 50% windows. So the fenestration and the glass is there, and the planning commission appreciated that. So that's one thing to consider. So as we go around to the outside over here, there's not really many places that you could put a window, but they managed to put one in the bathroom area, so at least to break up this particular wall, which is only seen from the backyard of this house to the north. So that was interesting. And again, that's 27 feet away plus the setback on the other property. So that makes a pretty good sized difference. And then when you go around to the back of it, there's elevation here and elevation here, both with windows. This one here, you have a whole house generator, and the condensing units for the air conditioners will be right back here. So what does that do? Number one, keeps them completely out of the view of the front of the house, so you can't see these, and because of this here, you're not likely to hear them either. And then being 27 feet away from the neighbor's property line, they've placed this in some of the most sensitive area that they can, so that they're being sensitive to the neighbors and the surrounding community. So the other part of this plan here, when you take a look at this, is a sliding door that comes off the master to a patio, and then another sliding door here. So we're seeing a lot of glass, and a new nook, which is predominantly glass. I mean, there's pretty much all glass there. And then it comes back around, and there's a window on this elevation and a door on this elevation, and a window on the other elevation, even though that's like a back hall. So they still put windows in there. So the fenestration, the care, the sensitivity shown to the outside were hallmarks which made the planning commission want to approve this. Again, subject to the variances from the ZBA, because there are 2 variances. So let's take a look real quick here. This is the second floor. So why the second floor, and what are we doing here? Well, I'll let you know as soon as I get to my button. Okay, so here we have over this, and this is what's going on here. There's a balcony. This is over the first floor, so the second floor is an addition over here. And if you notice now and see what they have, this is the master sitting area and a master here. And then there's, well, we know how big Char's closet's going to be. Okay? And then Bob's closet is over here. So the area with this is, so what does this all mean? This means that right now, as it stands, this house is being designed to age in place. This is the area that Bob and Char will occupy on the upstairs second floor of the house, while the parents are downstairs with that. Eventually, they will occupy the space downstairs, but in the meantime, this is the dream house, the house that they want to end in. This is their house. There's no plans, as I understand it, particularly from talking to Bob, that they have no intention of leaving here. And of course, Bob does have a vested interest in Huntington Woods. But aside from that, so that's the first and second floor plan. So importantly, let's take a look at these elevations and see what it is. So the north elevation, this is what the neighbor next door is seeing. When he looks out 27 feet away from his lot line, this is what he's seeing. He's seeing architectural diversity with a wall with a railing up here with a balcony. They're seeing architectural diversity and a gable coming off of this with turns to form a nice architectural break. They're seeing fenestration all the way through the addition, which is really nice. This part back here is a patio or a raised patio. So what you're seeing here with this brick, that's not house, that's patio. So that's outdoors. So this really is kind of minimalist on that side. This is a basement window with egress, so there will be egress there. And then on the other side, this is what you're seeing over here. Architectural break and a nice cover over a back porch entrance area. Again, the same patio that we see over here. Consistently broken up on this elevation with fenestration, which adds detail and interest to the wall. Let me get to another one here. Okay, so now here's, what do we see from the front? Again, I point this out because this is important. When I showed you the gaps, and I showed you what it was in the step backs and the elevation, I showed it to you for this reason, because your dimensional drawing here really doesn't do it justice, and that's why the overhead in the survey was important. This is the original house here. This, well again, let me do it this way so maybe everybody can see it. That's the original house here. That's the second plane that's way back. The fence would connect to that, and you can see the fence shown in the drawing. And behind that, additional amount of footage is this portion of the addition. So a step back is sensitive. It meets every detail the planning commission felt to pass it on to the zoning board of appeals. This one down here, if you take a look at this, again, this is a commitment to aging in place and handicap and being able to use this house forever. You can see that that does happen with the design of the back of the house. Tremendous use of fenestration. You see up here, you have the balcony that has the, I'm assuming that's wrought iron, correct?
It
me if
is.
I'm wrong.
Yep.
Okay.
Match the fence.
Yeah, and that way, you know, you can see, so architectural details, it's consistent with the neighborhood, it's consistent with the fence that they're proposing to put up, and it becomes a harmonious project. So let's take a look at this real quick and see, how does this meet the standards? We know it's a good house, right? We know that the design is right. So how does it meet the standards? So the first is that special or unique circumstances and conditions which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved, and which are not generally applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the same district. So the narrative that I give you tells you a little bit about that. But when you go to maximum house size, special conditions or circumstances that are related to the property and physical characteristics that may normally include exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape, exceptional topographic conditions, or other extraordinary situations related to the property. So here, how does that fit in? The conditions could be that the lot is not small, but in fact it's the largest lot on the full block, and as such is an outlier. As an example, the only other house with the same size lot is around the corner from the Paul residence at 26232 Pembroke, with the same front footage, 100 feet, which has 4,242 square feet. It's larger than the Paul request, and that exists today. It takes up 67.8% of the front streetscape. This addition, while it does add size, is located at the back and side. So this is not where two houses are combined and you have one massive front. This is a different type of architecture. And then for perspective, the proposed project takes 64 lineal feet across a 100-foot lot, which is 64% of the front streetscape, and it steps back, which the other house does not. So the house to the north takes up 72% of the front streetscape, and the house to the south takes up over 60%. Additionally, this addition is set way back from the front lot line where the other two comparables are not. So this is important. And then we'll talk about the fence for a second here on the same thing, because I want to stay with the standards and go, let's get it both out at one time. So the fence, unique conditions might be that the fence exists already for the reason that the lot was always considered protected on the side yard, hence fenced in. The logic there is that it was long ago established there's a reasonable desire to enclose the property for use, and the original architecture and configuration made it the side yard, which also helps explain the side addition portion. So the house and the land naturally flow that way. The topography flows that way. So that was why the fence is in the same location. They've gone with the same thing because that's the way the architecture is sending them. 2, the variance will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the general welfare. Again, for the maximum house size here, positive feedback from the neighbors existed from the planning commission meeting. Nobody has sent in any adverse communication, and I feel like all the people that had questions had them answered at the planning commission, and hence that's why nobody's here. But they all got notice. In defense, no adverse communications. I did get positive feedback again on that from the planning commission meeting. In standard 3, special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. So let's take a look at the maximum house size. The house and the lot predate the Paul ownership, and the configuration was set in a way that connections had to be made in a fashion that was compatible with the original architecture. The Paul family made a further effort to mitigate any adverse impact by the acquisition of the additional space on the side of the house. So they've got this house, they've got this lot that's sitting there, they go over to the lot, they're gonna build onto the lot. That was what that lot was originally for. That was what it was for, is to expand the house. So in expanding the house, at the time when the lot was configured and the house was configured, there was a reasonable assumption that they would be able to go ahead and expand their house. While aging in place was a main concern and the additional first floor living space was of major importance to the project, the contention is that they did have an expectation for a larger house based on the mass, proportion, scale, and size of the surrounding homes, and that this proposal, although larger than permitted, captures the spirit of the ordinance by careful design and acquisition of more area to accomplish the needs. Fence. The fence is already there. This again just offers a lesser variance by virtue of what they already have, and that fence that they have is currently legal non-conforming. So it could stay there. What they want to do is lessen that. And then 4, finally, a literal interpretations of the provisions of this ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district under the terms of this ordinance, and that the variance is the minimum necessary. So you have 2 lots that are the same size. It's notable that this lot has 100 foot of frontage, where the next door neighbor has 50%, or 50 feet, and yet has over 3,000 square feet. That's on a 50-foot lot. This would indicate that this project, even at 4154, could be consistent in scale or less mass and size than the house next door. The 4154 instead of the 4104 comes in because when the original calculations were done, the staircase was not removed, and the staircase is not livable space, and they are allowed to deduct that. So 4104 is the final house size for this. Okay, so while streetscape frontage is not a requirement, it certainly could be a consideration in your contemplation of size and scale. Also on the same block, there's a larger home with more mass and less attention to scale and massing. The applicant's not asking for more size than that. In fact, they're asking for less, almost 100 square feet less. And it meets the lot coverage requirements. So even though they've got this house, they're putting it out there, yes, they need some maximum house size variance, they're not big-footing the lot. So that's one of the other considerations that you have to take when you think about this. And as to the minimum necessary, this addition would allow for aging in place with a first floor bedroom. And even though this is the biggest lot on the block, they're not asking to be the biggest house. While the code takes house size versus normal zone lot into formula, occasionally there's outliers. And again, this goes back to what we were talking about originally, where the outlier could be that the lot is just bigger than most, and as such should have a proportionally larger house. Now, the code contemplates every normal situation, but every once in a while, as you well know because you've deliberated on these types of things before, there is a lot, there is a house, there is something in the works that makes this not work. So when that happens, they come to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I've put in the outline here the Planning Commission proposed requirements and how we arrived at that. So basically, what they're asking for is they're asking for a variance for the maximum house size, and they're asking for a variance for the fence location. You can take those one at a time, you can take them all together, whatever your pleasure is. There will just need to be a motion and a second and a vote for each. If you have any questions, I'm sure Mr. Howard will be able to answer them, and if not, I'll take my best shot at it, and then, of course, we always have Sheriff Paul here.
That's right.
Who can answer everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this light on unless anybody would like, well, Andy's gonna, so thank you, Andy, I appreciate your help with this.
Thanks, Hank. I'm gonna open it up to public participation on this appeal. Seeing and hearing none, I'm gonna close public participation on this appeal, open it up to the board for questions and discussion. Andy?
I'm just gonna start off saying I've got a rough time with this one. And I don't wanna advocate against it, but I'm not hearing any clear standard that we can apply to justify blowing past the maximum house size requirement. I appreciate the need to age in place. I appreciate the desire to have a dream home, but I don't hear truly extenuating circumstances that would compel or even make me personally at this point, and I'm not saying my decision is made, feel good about voting to grant the appeal. I've heard 2 things from you, Hank, and I appreciate your advocacy, as well as yours. It's on a big lot, and that there's one house that's bigger in the area. I don't know anything about the circumstances that allowed the other house to be bigger, but the mere fact that there's a bigger house in the area doesn't in my mind, it's not compelling standing alone. The point is, in my mind, the planning commission and coming up with the zoning ordinance, the zoning and other ordinances thought long and hard about house size requirements. They're there for a purpose, and my concern in approving this is that there is no true limiting factor that this panel can apply in the future to say you can't have as big a house as you want. And I guess what I'm asking is why, and I'll ask you, isn't this simply homeowners who want their dream house and they aren't paying, or you as the architect aren't paying real respect to that house size requirements, and you're exceeding it by a large amount in my mind, convince me that, for someone who cares about these requirements and making sure that we have the standing to enforce them going forward, that this isn't an approval that limits our credibility going forward if we ever want to say no to someone else.
Well, I would argue with you that I would say that this existing house is very small. And this existing house got a footprint that has you don't have the ability to create a first floor master in this existing house.
But there are lots and lots of homes in Huntington Woods that can't, and that's kind of my point. Anyone, based on this discussion tonight, anyone who wants a first floor master could, look at the video to this meeting and in the future say, they got a first floor master, why can't we? Even if it pays little or no respect to the existing requirements in terms of house size. And, I totally appreciate that people should be able, to a certain extent, a reasonable extent, be able to use the property in the way they want. But let me ask you a follow-up question. What efforts were made to work within the existing house size requirement? Did you come up with designs that were less ambitious than this one? Or is this the dream house and you're just presenting to us, because the planning commission did not vote on the house side, they obviously left that to us. So did you try to have a smaller
We
footprint?
did.
And what happened?
We definitely did. And what happened was, we still couldn't fit it in that 3656 number. It was just impossible to do it. Because you have a second floor that has as minimal as addition as we could do on that. And what frustrates me as an architect so much with this maximum house size is, I have a 14,000 square foot lot, and I have a lot coverage I don't even come close to. Why am I getting pigeonholed into this maximum house size when I clearly don't, I'm not even close to any of the other setbacks?
So what you're doing then is saying that without arguing, that you don't like the zoning requirements, but my point is they're there. They mean something. They've got to be enforced absent an extenuating circumstance that truly is unique. And I'm not hearing here anything that is unique. I'm hearing from you, who is saying, you are constrained, understandably, by the requirements. But I'm thinking about future petitions, future appeals, and what would this panel say that would allow us to say to the next person who wants to age in place, and the next person who wants to come and say, I want a very prodigious master bedroom on the first floor, master suite. There's a bigger house in the neighborhood, and it's a big lot. But I have not understood, maybe I'm wrong, that those are the type of considerations that that are here.
Go ahead, David.
Mr. Chair, if I can answer a question.
Yep, sure, Hank.
Maybe offer a point of clarification to this. You have a 100-foot lot, they're platted as 250s, they're joined together, right? So you take the house that's there, even if you put an addition onto that, it still wouldn't take up the room if it was still a 50-foot lot. If you take the amount of the addition, the square footage of the addition, top and bottom, and you put it on that second lot, it would be okay. So you're taking it, because it is one house. If you had the two houses, even though the house is gonna be 5 feet away from it there, they own both lots. And I don't know if you're following me with this. I can take the 1,336 square foot addition plus the 600 square foot from up top and put it on this lot, and it would fit.
So Hank, are you saying there's a maximum house size per lot? This particular lot is actually a double lot.
Yeah,
So it's over the maximum house size for one 50-foot lot.
no, it's over the maximum house size for a 100-foot lot, but if you
It's
split
not.
off the addition.
Right, it would work as
not for
a
two.
whole standalone.
Yeah.
You could
It
put them
would
on
be different.
250s.
So what happens is, and again, and I'm just trying to give you information because, I'm not gonna live here. But I just, you know, I want you to understand that there are some mitigating factors to this. And then, and I definitely appreciate what Andy is saying, that there's a house in the neighborhood. But the reality of it is, it's on the same block, and it is the only other 100-foot lot on the same block. All the other lots are not 100 feet, they're less. So they're starting with that. So, informationally, I hope that gives you something to think about, and I'm not, you know, I'm not here to influence decisions, I'm here to provide information.
So, just a point of clarification, the lot coverage, that's obviously a percentage of the, right. That's a percentage of the lot, that the bottom of that
The
fraction
footprint.
is just the size of the lot.
Yes,
The maximum house size, is that uniform in this district, and it doesn't matter how big the lot is?
it's uniform in the district and it does not matter how big
Right,
the lot
so-
is. There is a lot
Right.
bonus for
Okay.
having a little bit bigger lot. So, one could say on one hand, okay, well, there's a lot bonus, and then on the other hand, you could say, that may be, but my lot is bigger than what the bonus will let me have, therefore I'm on the opposite end of the scale, which is why I brought up the outlier portion of it.
Right.
And, you know, Andy brings up some very valid points, and I think that there's points on both sides. What you need to decide is, does it make sense? And if you take a look at what it is, what they're putting there, take a look at the setbacks, take a look at the volume, take a look at the elevations, and that's the decision that you have to come up with.
Do you happen to know what the bonus is?
556, is
Yeah.
that the 556?
An additional 556 square feet.
Yeah,
You know, in theory, if the Pauls didn't have their lovely home on this double lot, could they subdivide it and sell it as two 50-foot lots?
yeah,
Could still do that, right?
So,
yeah.
Right, so
so you get
the
double
lot
but
bonus
you only get
for
500 more square
for,
feet.
exact, right.
Yeah.
It's not zero, but it doesn't reflect the proportion of the
That's kind of where, that
Right.
would be what the contention of the Pauls
Yeah.
would be, is that while this is an outlier, and as such, runs afoul of the ordinance.
Is the lot bonus, like the case for, would that be the same lot bonus if you had a
It
75
wouldn't
foot?
matter what size
Doesn't
lot
matter.
you had, if you qualify for a bonus, meaning if your lot is over a certain amount of square feet in a certain zone district, you get additional square footage because of
But
that.
that's fixed, that's
That's a
five,
fixed, that's a
fixed.
fixed number.
That number doesn't change
That
if you
number
have an
doesn't
acre, okay,
change. You get X,
Got
and
it,
when- if
okay.
you're in Y, you get Z.
okay.
So, and that's what it works out, and it's a formula that's done through the square footage of the lot.
And that's my frustration with the maximum house size, is a guy at 10,000 square foot lot size gets the same bonus that we get at 14,000, or the guy at 8,000 gets the same bonus. Why don't we get an increase on that if all of a sudden our house, our property's bigger?
There's a cap for that, and the reason is to avoid Bigfoot houses.
And, you know, just with all due respect, you know, I've participated and I think I chaired the process that led to the promulgation of this system, with these limits. And, you know, maybe I'm, thinking about the process, but I remember the debate so vividly, and that in the considerations that were made and how we very much arrived at what we considered to be a compromise that caused people to, you know, have consensus, and everyone recognizing that there were sacrifices made. And, you know, the system that was adopted, you know, we believed had integrity. You don't think it has integrity, and therefore you designed as if it didn't. in the sense.
Let's just bring the temperature down a little.
I'm not even saying I'm gonna vote against it right now, I'm just,
Right,
I'm just thinking,
There was absolutely a lot of integrity put into what we did here.
no, not the house.
no one's integrity is.
No, I'm
is
not,
on-
I didn't mean that at all, I apologize. What I meant to say is that you kind of moved around it because you thought your design did have integrity, but, you know, I don't think you, is it correct if I'm wrong, am I wrong if I say that you didn't necessarily think that the restrictions that were in place were appropriate?
Well, that's why we have a ZBA. I guess what, if the code could be,
I don't know if I can answer that.
sure, of course.
Well, I think it's a bit unfair to sit there and say, well, geez, you know what, 3656, you could have easily fit that in there. Or you could have fit it in there, you could have designed it differently, you could have put it in. We desperately tried to do that. And we just could not fit it in there.
What about between 36 and 4,000 plus, which is where you ended up to make that effort?
What, you want me to cut 104
No, I'm
square
sorry.
feet out of it?
David,
Mr.
All
Chair,
right.
I didn't know if you were gonna go around. or-
Sorry.
Well, I had
I'm
a
done.
few questions. First, why is there not a rear lot variance required here? Is it because it's all landscaping?
Yeah.
Okay. Second, the fence, as far as my experience in the city has always been, in any city, and I work in commercial real estate for a living, it's what I do, and I've done it for 20 years. You remove a non-conforming structure, you're done. You don't get to go to less non-conforming. I mean, you replace more than 50% of it, or you remove it, it's gone. So you don't get to like move your grandfather to a little less grandfather. I've never seen it work like that.
Just for clarification, that fence is there, and if.
But we're talking about moving it, which becomes a new
You're talking
fence.
about moving it back further.
Which, I mean, wouldn't that essentially become a new fence then, right?
It is gonna be a new fence.
Well, it's not grandfathered, that's why they're.
It's still-
Right, but I'm saying, right, but we're trying to make
Right.
an argument that it's less.
less bad.
Right, the reality is, it's like that old fence doesn't exist. As soon as it comes out, you don't have anything anymore. You don't have a grandfather, right?
Just to that point for clarification, the old fence is not going to come out unless the variance comes from.
Okay.
Okay, but-
And that's a different story. That's
Can I ask a
already there.
question?
Go ahead, Joe.
Hold on, wait, I'm not done, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Joe, I
David, let
apologize.
David finish.
I'm not done. All right, as far as the size goes, the question to me comes, are they being deprived of what other people in the neighborhood have? And we have had situations where people have come in with bigger than normal lots. We did it a few years ago on Hendry, next to Saxey. I can't remember the house, the last name, but it was a big lot, like really big. And we ran into this issue of the district's, whatever the limit was there, 3,500 feet. It really isn't fair to them. It doesn't allow them to do with their lot what other people can do with their own property because of the size. On the other hand, what if somebody buys 4 lots, which you can do? If you've got enough money, you can buy 4 lots. Can you build to 8,000 feet now? Because are you being deprived? You've got all this land. I mean, I think part of the reason we have these limits is because we're protecting the character of Huntington Woods. And an 8,000 square foot house or a 6,000 square foot house starts to look pretty big in this neighborhood, and it's not the character of the neighborhood. So at what point is there a limit because you've got a big lot? I mean, I think what you're saying, there was probably some pretty good reason why they said, well, hey, you get a lot bonus, but ultimately it stops here. And I would think it was to prevent a change in the character of this neighborhood. So I think that's something we need to consider, and I need to listen more. And I think I've seen us in my time here, which is probably 4, 5, 6 years in this. I think I've seen us go both ways and look at it depending on the existing circumstances. So, again, on the fence, I see no, I mean, to me, you just lose it. But at the size, I think something we need to deliberate a little bit more on, in my opinion.
Joe?
Okay, my turn. Can you explain to me why the fence can't be moved further back? I've not seen the property, so I'm a little bit confused over why it has to be in the position that you show it there.
Well, it was done for a couple reasons. One was to kind of utilize it, because right now it kind of hits haphazardly in the side of the house, if you saw my photos that I passed around. And the reason why we pushed it back was to kind of let it set back from or give a little recess to the edge of the new addition. Could it be moved back to the next
Yes.
bump back? Yes, absolutely it could. Absolutely it could. So, I mean, if and I don't want to speak for you, but if we moved it back, I think that then meets the intent of the ordinance. Would you
Yes.
agree? Because it's 50% back from the,
Is this the next?
yeah, that would be the
setback?
next natural transition, correct?
If it's going to be moved from the present location or the present proposed location, that would be the natural next place that it would go. So with the understanding that if you take a look at this right now, the fence currently is here, it's proposed to go back to here, and that what Mr. Howard is saying is that if it goes anywhere, putting it here, here, and here are not practical.
Yeah.
It would go
Right.
there architecturally.
Yeah.
If that's something that the board would feel, would be okay for that, then that's something that, you know.
Wouldn't that also meet being 50% of the back of the width
Do we
of the
even need to vote
house?
on that, would be my question.
Well, here's the thing, at that point, once you put the addition on, it becomes whether or not that's 50%. And at that point, I believe that it doesn't have, if he put it there, he wouldn't need the vote. However, before we go there, if he doesn't have an addition that's approved, then this is a moot point.
Oh,
Okay, I have another comment I'd like to make. You know, I've been thinking about what Andy said and whatnot, but the truth of the matter is, we're not a homogeneous community in different places. And here we got, just down the road from where they're talking about, we have a house that's, 3,600 square feet? And then we have a big lot that matches up pretty much what they did. It doesn't seem reasonable that we would then not allow them to have the same kind of house that is just down the road. Now, again, a lot of Huntington Woods is not homogeneous with the same size cookie cutter lots. And so I think that this needs consideration as a deviation from what the zoning is.
yeah, I mean, I think not that it's like you get points or you trade off, but I think the coming in under the lot coverage does speak to that there is an element of this that is conservative, so to speak, that isn't trying to, right, it's not like some of these houses that we can picture from a certain era in Birmingham that it's like a giant, cube that is taking up every cubic inch of available space. That this has, it doesn't, it's not front loaded and it's not, stamping out all the porous surfaces and the green space that's there currently.
Can I ask one final question?
Go ahead, Andy.
And first of all, I did not, and if I did, I really am sorry, mean to suggest that anyone has acted in anything other than good faith. So if that came out not that way, I apologize. But did you try and be less ambitious? Let's take it for granted that 36 was not going to work. Did you try to do something less ambitious than what it ended up at 4,000? What was it?
4104.
4,104.
I mean, so that's a 500.
448.
So it's 448. Did you try and make it less violative?
We did, and Hank made a point early in his part of the presentation that talked about the bigger doorways, the bigger hallways for age in place on this first floor. And those create more square footage. The area in that bathroom to be able to be barrier-free accessible means that that bathroom is bigger. So when it became very critical and important, when Bob and Char talked to me, to let Bob's mom and dad move in here, because they will need to, we felt that it was very important to be able to make it barrier-free accessible. And that added square footage.
When are they moving in?
Well, they would be moving in as soon as the addition is complete. Bob's father's gonna be 90 this coming March. His mom is currently 88. We are their only family in Michigan, and they currently live in Grand Blanc. So we've had to drive there in the middle of the night. And we would prefer to have them with us than in
Sure.
like a.
For the record, I'm sorry.
Oh,
You
yep.
can step up to the microphone and grab a seat by Brian.
Sure. I forgot your admonishment hand, sorry.
He yells at me.
Right.
Nobody wants.
So, if the addition is approved and as soon as the construction is finished, Bob's parents would be moving in with us. It's really not a future thing. If they could move in with us now, but they can't, I would have them do that. Bob's dad is going to be 90 in March of next year. His mom is currently 88, and later next year she'll be 89. She uses a walker, and she's still driving, but we would prefer that she didn't. So they live in Grand Blanc. It's 60 miles away from us, and we are their only family in Michigan. So,
Thank you. So, if I can, oh, go ahead.
I just have one question. I mean, I know, so all of the existing stuff, it looks like there's a really big living room, a sitting room, and then there's a new sitting room and TV room. There's a new hall and a new nook. It does look, it looks like there's a lot of flowy, open wonderfulness, but also it exceeds the limits in the ordinance. So like, the way I'm looking at this is, there's 3 living areas on the bottom, and that doesn't include on the top when there's also a master sitting area now. Yep, master sitting area. I mean, this is like an absolute dream home, no doubt. But I don't think that most homes in Huntington Woods have 4 sitting areas. And then I also noticed the basement has a pretty sweet looking sitting area, bar, like, I mean, I wonder, 484 square feet, I could absolutely chop that off right now. And so it's curious to me that it was unable to be kind of made
Well, when you're
more
trying
fit.
to, when you're moving older parents in
Yeah.
to live with you, that sitting room that you see there was able to be closed off, so they're still trying to be independent. And they don't want to be going out into Bob and Char's main living room to watch TV, or watch the news, or potentially read a book. So the idea behind that is to create, I don't want to call it a small house, but I'll say it's for somebody to, it's for them to be able to not be meandering through the house to go watch TV or something to that effect. So that's where that one came from.
They have all their own living space, but a
That's-
shared kitchen.
That's correct. But there is a little kitchenette area in that sitting room. There's a bar.
I see there's like
There's a bar, there's an under-counter refrigerator, there's a
Okay.
sink,
Yeah,
microwave. Correct.
Okay, and I didn't realize that's on that side.
Mhm.
I was feeling like it was on the kitchen side, but now I got it. It's on
It's an in-law suite, basically.
Yep, gotcha.
So to answer your question, if you look on the back of the existing house, there's a small little sitting area that it
Yep.
says. That room is no wider than from that wall to me. So that's really technically, it's really a mud room is what it is, but they use it as their TV room right now. So again, I'm just trying to explain how we got to where we are today and where this 448 came from. And it's part of, and maybe I could have done a better job. I could have shaved 10 square feet off here or there. Would that have made a difference if I came in at 425 versus 448? It's just, we were given a program. We were asked to create, you call it a dream home. I think I call it a home that, you know, we'd all would love to live in, sure. But I think it gives, it meets all the criteria of, and the boxes that I needed to check off as their architect.
No, I think you did a
And I-
lovely job. I'm not-
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just,
Well, here, I want to sort of, if I can,
yeah, go ahead.
I feel like, so Mitch Meisner is not currently on the ZBA. I kind of want to channel him and then say what I would say to him if he were still on the ZBA, which is like the particular circumstances of the residents are not supposed to be our consideration, our primary consideration, right? Because this is a spatial variance, not a use variance, and it runs with the land, right? So it doesn't, so that's what Mitch would say. And then I would say, Mitch, right, these are people's homes, and we just, in the interest of the equities of it, can and should take that into consideration. I think the two trends that we've seen in the time that I've been out here, one is aging in place and multi-generational housing within the bounds of the, single-family homes, right? We're not converting, detached garages and apartments or anything like that. And the other is like more working from home over the past now, 2-3 years. And that those, that people want to stay in Huntington Woods, and that we want to accommodate that, and the ZBA has flexibility to accommodate that with the responsibility of, doing it in a way where it's not precedent, right? Doesn't mean what happens on Dundee gets you what you come and ask for as precedent on, Concord or Scotia, but, it ought to make sense. Just holistically, this seems like a very reasonable and thoughtful design. Like if you just sort of put it on the lot and on the block, there's nothing about, I know we have lots of different variables that we're considering. If you zoom out a little bit, I don't begrudge people their sitting areas, and if the Pauls moved out and a single, guy moved in and could sit in all the rooms at his, then that would be his prerogative, right? It's not particular to that. Enough said.
And they could build a second house on this other lot, right, for his parents.
but that's a second house.
I understand, but they already own the two lots, like,
I understand.
I
I think that ultimately, we gotta look at, I think there's a couple things. We have to look at does it meet the standard for a variance? That's first off. Was it special or unique circumstances that are peculiar to the land? Will it be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the general welfare? And have there been special conditions and circumstances that do not result from the applicant's actions? I don't think there's any special circumstances here. I mean, it's land. And another thing we have to look at is the intent. Like, what is the intent? Our job is to look at the intent of the zoning. When this was drawn up, and I don't know how long ago it was.
3 years, 4 years?
When you got, at a certain point, they said, in this area you can build this big, in this area you can build this big, in this area you can build this big. And I've said it before in this meeting, I did an addition to my house, and I bumped my head at 3,200 feet, and I stopped. And I called Hank. I said, Hank, what do you think? And he said, I don't think you'll get approved. You don't have a good case here, why you should be able to go bigger. And I stopped right at the limit.
And just to kind of follow up on that point, I come at this from a particular perspective because those discussions about the bonus, about the size limits, were so intense, elongated, it accommodated so many conflicting interests
believe it.
that I feel like it's really important to respect that.
Let me keep going, because I think at a certain point, the reason you guys finally said, even if we're gonna look at both lot coverage, because you're respecting the size of the lot, but then you're saying, we're gonna bump our heads somewhere. And if we're not bumping our heads and being respectful of those total sizes, ultimately, you can build any size property you want on Nathan Woods. You can buy a block, right? If somebody offers you enough money, somebody offers me enough money, I'll sell tomorrow, I don't care. Pay me $2 million, I'll be out of here, whatever. And you can buy a whole block and build 20,000 feet. But are you honoring the intent of the variance? Or I should say of the code? I think when you go 200 feet over 5%, yeah, you're making some accommodations. I think here we're looking at over 12%, something like that. It's a stretch. I think the argument that it's multi-generational, I respect that. I'm hesitant to say this, but I think if my grandparents were here, they'd slap me and say, what are you talking about? Your grandparents lived with us in a bungalow in Oak Park. There were 7 people in that house. So I think we're looking a little bit of, first world rich people problems in a way, and not necessarily respecting the intent of the people who spend a lot of time writing these ordinances. And if we don't, then if we don't respect them, what do we have these ordinances for?
Let me just comment on that.
Go ahead, Joe.
This, Huntington Woods, and certain parts of it is not homogeneous, so we have outliers. I'm saying, I think that this is an outlier, and I think there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to have a house similar to other houses in area on a lot this
You're
size.
saying the lot is an outlier.
Yeah,
Because
yes,
I agree.
It's a double lot.
it's an,
I'm not
But
saying you're wrong.
but the house as proposed is not an outlier. Like, that's what, it doesn't, they're not trying to build like, something like,
I
if you
get
had
it,
like,
but the rationale we're using could be applied to approve.
They wanted to build an 8,000 square.
Right, if you say, well, we have a
maybe
triple
we
lot.
wouldn't. I
We
mean,
have
that's
a
the thing, we're just
quadruple
taking
lot.
it
but they would still have to come to the BZA and go through the planning commission, so,
But why would that
And
be
it's
different?
not precedent, right?
If somebody says, hey, we got a quadruple lot, we got 200 feet of frontage, we want to build 8,000 feet. Why should I say no?
because it doesn't match any houses in the area like this one does.
Maybe-
Right, I mean, it's to say that when it wouldn't even become the biggest house on its own block, let alone, elsewhere in the front of the woods or the acres, seems to be a hard, it's not a, it just, I don't think the ZBA, like, slippery slope arguments really are good here because we just take each one on its own merits. But I don't even think this would be a slippery slope if we were prone to slippery slopes.
Hank?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back on a point, because I don't want to confuse anybody on this situation. This is one lot.
It is, one lot.
It's platted twice.
What does that mean?
It means it was
It's-
originally platted as 2, but over time was combined to one single lot. It
It had
is
2
one
tax
lot.
IDs and then they combined to.
Yep.
Yeah,
For one.
So it's one
Somebody
lot.
bought 2 lots.
This is one lot. So
That's what
And they bought it as one lot.
so
they
yeah.
made it one lot. But regardless of which, it's one lot.
They bought it, it was 2 lots, but we merged them together, and now it's under one tax ID.
Got it.
One
Right, but
tax
that-
ID number and it's one. So the issue with this becomes is now you have this one parcel. The architecture of the original house, if you were to do this on one parcel, you may have centered this house. But the original architecture has the original house on the one thing. There's a setback on the rear, so you can't just blow this behind this and put it there. So what did they do? They went to the side where there's an additional 50 feet of space and created a stepped-in thing. Now, I think it's important to understand that what you're looking for dimensional variance is, yes, you want to hear the story, yes, you want to hear the whys, and yes, you want to hear the design philosophy behind it. But the reality is that you have a house here that for 100 feet in that neighborhood, and the only one, there's another house on that block that is larger than that, but that's only that block. That doesn't count the house that's across the street and over that's bigger, or the one down on the corner. And that's just one of the things. And again, this is Dundee, right? So what's the street behind it? Well, that's Hendry. And there's a lot of houses that are bigger than this. So those are some of the things that and I could name you 5 right off the top of my head, and probably give you addresses that are bigger than this. So, and I'm gonna tell you that the issue with this becomes, does that make it the spirit of the ordinance? Maybe, that's up for you to decide. It's not out of character with the neighborhood, even though it may be to the letter of the code. And even when you write a code, and I'll be the first one to say this because I was intimately involved in the maximum house size formula, is that you're gonna get houses and you're gonna get lots where stuff just doesn't fit. Or you're gonna get lots that are bigger and then they're limited. So it's the inverse of it doesn't fit because the lot's too small, that's why I need it. That's not the case here. They meet their house, they meet their lot coverage. So that's what you're thinking of. So the thought process is, and I didn't want to get lost in the minutia of handicap, not handicap, although the Fair Housing Act would apply for a reasonable accommodation for somebody that would be living in, or a reasonable accommodation debate it should be. But that's not what they're arguing, even though they've clearly designed it to meet the aging in place standards. The house on a 100 square foot lot, they're saying, because the lot is 100 square feet and there's only 2 of them right there, and if they would have gone further, there would have been more, is not even the same size as the other ones on the 100 square foot lot, so they have missed. That's where I think their argument is, and that's where I think that you have to take a look at it. The fact that they have more sitting rooms, yeah, they do. The fact that they have a kitchen and another kitchen and a half kitchen, yeah, they do. But the space, however it's utilized, is important to them for that type of thing. And again, the house is clearly designed for handicap. I'll bet you, and although the dimensions for that aren't included on there, I'll bet you the darn thing is pretty close to complete ADA specs. But, go ahead.
I know, just having said, I'm on the board of review as well, and we standardize our taxes, and they're all based on the different districts, and it's just like, okay, anyone in this district pays this much, and there's outliers. There's always going to be things that don't fit with our standardization, with our easy way to, place things and classify things and code things. And so that makes perfect sense, right? Like, this is a much bigger lot. It's just like, it doesn't fit anymore. I get it. My only thought was, I think you could shave definitely here and there. Doesn't matter at this point, I'm not sure. So, I completely hear what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying, but based on anything where we're standardizing something, there's gonna be things that don't fit. And so I think we always have to be able to have exceptions to every rule.
Yeah, I think the bonus is a good thing. Like it's kind of what gives the front of the woods its unique look. There's a lot of room around the houses, room for old growth trees. You have big houses and you have room. So I get why we have it. And I also think you make a really good point about working from home. You need another sitting room for an office. If you're going to call it a sitting room or an office, you do. However, I think that for me, the double lot, the fact that this sits on what could be 2 lots as 1 lot, and is under what would be allowed on 2 separate lots, is worth considering. And I may be the outlier here, but I also think architectural integrity is important. Like, we may shave 300 square feet off a house, but is that going to maintain the right proportion? Is that going to beautify the neighborhood? Is that going to have the same integrity of design that a house that's a couple hundred square feet bigger would have? I think David brings up a very good point about the fence. I struggle with it because of what I just said about architectural integrity and design. I think that's a beautiful place for a fence because you have a walkway right around the front there, and then it opens up into a side yard, and I just think it would look better personally and beautify the neighborhood. But you do raise up a good point. If you're grandfathered in and then you move something that's grandfathered, it's usually kaput. So I don't know where to go with that. but I am inclined to approve it. I'll just go out ahead and say it because I think it's beautiful. I think it's really well thought out. I see how there's a separate living space on what I believe is the north side of the house, that is completely separate in its own thing. And the fact that like 500 of these square feet, which are basically what we're talking about, are on a second floor. This isn't footprinted out and taking up, drainage and square footage on the lot. And I think everybody's made really strong, valid points here. Like it's tough because this board does have to kind of control what our neighborhood is and will be, and the fact that like we're a nice mix of different homes and different professions and different people, I think is what makes our city so great. So if we start like footprinting everything and approving everything that comes through here, will that always be the case? Maybe not. But this, for me, is pretty.
Mr. Chair, can I address David's
Sure.
fence point? Because I'm wondering if he wouldn't be more comfortable with it if they took the fence off the table and moved it back to the other point, and then there's not such a big ask for the evening.
Well, I'll tell
We
you,
can consider them separately, too.
I'll tell you where I'm at. I can tell you exactly where I'm at. As much as I think it's gray and needs to be considered, I am of the mind to move to approve the size variance, however, to deny the fence. That's what I'm just about to say that.
Okay, and if the fence comes off the table, then there's no.
I see them as separate issues. I'm not trying to make a compromise here, I just think, I don't 100% agree with it, but I'm not gonna, I don't think that's the standard that you have to 100% agree with it. But I do think that with the size of the lot, a reasonable case could be made that they're not getting the same rights as their neighbors.
I'm sorry, what?
That they're not receiving the same rights and privileges as their neighbors, as far as house size in proportion to the lot size. I think a point can be made there. I don't love it. I think it's great. I think the ordinance probably needs to be tweaked. But I think a reasonable case can be made. I do not think a reasonable case can be made on the fence. As much as I want to say yes to everybody who comes in here, they're all our neighbors, and a lot of times they're our friends, but we're up here because we've got a job, and the job is to protect everybody, not just our friends or neighbors that come in before us.
Can I ask that you look at them as two separate items?
Yep.
Because,
Yeah, that's, we
because
have
I,
that.
because I think Shar and I just spoke, and we'll take the fence off the table.
That's fine. Okay. All right.
We'll leave the existing fence as is.
So I move to grant the variance for section 40-4.03, the dimensional requirement of a 440 square foot, where 3,656 feet is allowed for an addition to the existing house, as the request is consistent with house first lot size in the block, and I think case has been made reasonably that they would be deprived of the same privileges that they're saying that their neighbors have had.
Okay.
So be it.
That's one
moved.
motion.
That's a motion. I would second the motion as
Second.
stated.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I just didn't think it met the standards.
Me neither.
I just, we have four very clear standards, and I just don't think they were met.
That's why we debate those.
And I think it's important that the two votes are on the record because it establishes a place marker for future discussion that these ordinances do matter.
It takes courage to vote like that. Honestly.
And I'm glad you got to be able to do what you want with your house, that's great, but I think precedent
Wait,
does
we
matter.
still have to discuss the fence, or we have to vote
Unless
on
it's
the
Are you withdrawing the fence?
Yes, we're withdrawing the fence.
Oh, altogether?
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
And again, I
Wait, so
didn't
just,
suggest anything.
No worries.
Okay.
No, we go
so
to-
they're withdrawing the motion to approve the fence. Do we need to do anything else?
No,
Just accept the withdrawal.
Okay.
We've no
All
objection.
right, thank you.
Bye, thank you.
All right, take care.
I
All right, thanks.
kind of feel relief for
You know
two
what,
votes
sometimes you
against,
make
but
a
at the same
mistake.
time.
The next item on the agenda is the appeal from Zach Ostroff on behalf of the pronunciation, the Lopayton family, excuse me.
All right.
13345 Victoria for a variance, section 40-4.03 R1A through R1E, one family district. Dimensional requirements, maximum house size of 337 square feet, requesting 2872 where 2535 is allowed. The house is currently 2,600 square feet, and that's oversized. For an addition to the house, as well as variance from section 40-4.03 R1A through R1E, one family district. Dimensional requirements for lot coverage, 35.3%, where 30% is allowed. Go ahead.
Before you, this is not Patton's.
Yeah,
This is,
yeah.
Well, here comes the recuse.
Yeah,
I don't know that I have to recuse myself. I do know that I have a relationship that's not unclose with Asher.
Better safe than sorry, man.
What?
Better safe than sorry. You're
Okay.
thinking about it.
I'll better recuse myself.
Okay. All right,
Because
thanks.
I'm pretty.
Thanks.
Okay, at this point in time then, you have 6 members. If the board accepts Andy's recusal,
Do we still have a quorum?
do we have
you
enough?
have a
you
quorum.
Quorum, but it still takes 4 votes, only it takes 4 votes out of 6.
And doesn't the applicant have the right to request a table at any time before a motion?
At any time prior to the vote.
The vote,
It's your
okay.
vote. That's it.
Okay. All right, you get that?
Yeah,
Okay. All
I
right.
understand.
All right.
Okay. My name is Zach Ostroff, and I worked on the plans for Mr. Lopayton. Essentially, what we have, somewhat similar to the previous case, I apologize. A little bit different, but we've gone to the planning commission, we've got approval. Originally, the whole project stemmed for 2 reasons. One reason is Mr. Lopayton and his wife they're probably in their mid-60s, and they have elderly parents, and their elderly parents often stay with them. They're religious people, and over Friday and Saturday, they don't use electricity, and they have their parents stay with them. And this house is actually a multi-level house. There is absolutely no bathroom existing on the main level. So they would have to climb stairs. They can climb the stairs, but they're elderly. I believe he's 85 or 86, something like that. He cannot climb stairs. And in fact, he has a walker. So originally, our proposal was a lot larger than this, and not huge, but we had the front of the house protruding past the existing front face of the existing house. So if you look at the site plan on would be the west side of the house. Originally, we had it protruding farther. I believe we still met the front setback, but we were farther than what's existing. What this proposal is, and this is what was approved through the planning commission, is a lesser scale of what our original was. It gives them a bathroom, not a handicapped accessible bathroom, but a bathroom that they can functionally use today. The spaces, what's labeled on sheet A1 is a guest bedroom that's currently a library. But again, their in-laws need someplace to sleep as they cannot drive. They're not allowed to drive on Friday night and Saturday. So this would give them a suite where everything's on the one level. They don't necessarily need to go upstairs or downstairs. Everything, they can eat on this level. So essentially, the project stems from being able to, age in place, in a sense, having their parents stay with them overnight, which is important to them, and have just a little bit more space on the inside. In terms of those, the 4 criteria that I know that you're looking at, the unique condition on this house is the fact that there is no bathroom on the main level. Most of the houses that I've been associated with, I've been working in Huntington Woods, drawing plans for over 20 years. Most of them do have bathrooms, not all of them, but most of them have bathrooms on the main level. So that would be that one. The variance does not significantly affect the neighborhood. In fact, we're not going farther than what the existing front face of the house is. So it's not protruding past that front face.
The only thing that is a uncovered porch that or a covered porch that we're proposing to put on so that, in inclement weather, that they have someplace to stand under while they're waiting to come into the house. Yeah, again, we've done 3 or 4 iterations of this project, and this is we feel this is the least amount to gain what the homeowner needs, but yet kind of trying to satisfy the zoning board and the planning commission at the same time. We realize that we're over slightly on the lot coverage. Other than that, the architecture, we're matching materials. It's not really something that's going to stick out. And that's essentially it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks. Hank?
Yeah, this is an interesting case, because although there are similarities to the last one, there's differences here. And part of the differences that you have here is you have a house that has no reasonable accommodations on the first floor. So when you take a look at this and you say, okay, well, the house is over on the lot coverage, the house is over on the maximum house size. It was, but the original house didn't dictate how the square footage was used. It just gave you the walls for it. The interior configurations were such that it didn't have a first floor bathroom. So while there are houses that are first floor that don't have a first floor bathroom, they're adding them. And part of the reason is because if your bathroom is on the second floor, that means everybody goes into your private living space that has to use your restroom. And sometimes people just aren't comfortable with that. Or sometimes they're fine with it, but the people can't get there. So again, this is kind of an aging in place thing, but this is something to consider. So Andy, if you would mind that, I'm gonna put this up on the board and talk about this for a little bit. So you see here, this is the area that they're adding right here to the front. Now, the unique part about this, and the porch doesn't matter because the porch conforms, other than because of the roof, that counts towards their lot coverage. So the porch is one thing. Separately, the house went like this, and if you can follow me, that's the way the house went. So what they're doing is they're squaring it off. Well, why is that important if you're just adding everything pretty much to the other side? Well, because you are and you're not. The mudroom splits down the middle. And the difference with that is that it's a reasonable and prudent use of space to have a place to put your coat and have a place to put things when you come in the front door. So that's why that design is, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. And then you turn to the right, you have what was a library that's going to be a guest bedroom. Most places, or a high percentage of the places, have a bedroom on the first floor. So if you have a bedroom, what you're doing, if they don't, this configuration allows one person, one couple on the first floor with a modest bedroom, a modest bathroom, and a modest mudroom, because the people here with the door and the way that this sets up enter through the front. Because if you take a look at the plan for the house and you take a look at this, there is no other place to enter this house other than around the back, like over here where the doors are. If you take a look at the plan that's on A1, you can see that that's not the case. So let me do this and indulge me for a second here. I don't want to do that. Okay, so this is what you're seeing here. So the front of the house that Mr. Ostroff is proposing, it looks like all the other houses, but because of what it is, they have more square footage. So it's normal to have a front that goes like this. To have it go back takes away the square footage for what he's looking for. And again, these aren't, the whole house isn't drawn, so let me go back to this. I'm going to see if I can actually bring this up a little bit more. So to make this a little bit easier, this area right in here is the space that they're adding. And if you look at it and they're adding it to the dining room, yes, they are, but they're doing it in order to gain the extra room for functional. over here. So if you didn't add the space over here, you would be hard put to gain the space in the middle for the master and the mudroom, because you still need to accomplish that. So there's no other place really that you could put that would be reasonable for that access without, compromising the walls or doing anything like that. So I think that's where, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's kind of where you were going with that for the design. So the design of the elevation, again, this went through the planning commission, and I do want to point out that it wasn't passed the first time that it went through. And the reason was because they were out in front because they were trying to get more square footage. He's now come with a lesser plan, and what he's looking for is 337 square feet, requesting 2872, where 2335 is allowed. The lot is an R1E lot. This is a bigger lot in an R1E district. R1E districts are districts like Hart, where there's 40-foot lots, where there are an occasional 60 and an occasional one bigger. But R1E is typically a smaller lot. This happens to be a larger lot in the same zone district. So that's one thing to take for consideration on this. Excuse me. And then if you take another look at this, and you say, okay, fine, well, what is the lot coverage gonna be, and they need the porch, do they really need the porch? The porch is a matter of practicality in Michigan. It just really is. Because if you take a look at this and you see there's no other place to get into the house over here until you get back over here where my arrow is. And I'll go back here. Here's the driveway, so you gotta go this and come all the way around to get into the house. By the time you've done that, you're soaked and everything. So they use the front door on this house. That's their entry point. So once you say that and accept that, then it's reasonable to assume that you want to have some kind of covering over the front door. So that's up to you, but while originally and on the surface it looks like it's, you're starting from above the original house size, you're starting from above the original lot size, the answer is you are. But the district you're in, the R1E, which is zoned for smaller lots, the lots are zoned in R1E for 5,000 square feet and above. This is over 6,000 square foot lot. 6250 is R1D. Where this is at 60 by 125, or by 60 by 135, you're almost to R1C standards. So that's kind of where you're at with this, and that's why I wanted to make sure that we brought that to your attention. So, again, it's difficult because, unlike the other projects, this is oversized before it starts, so you need to determine if the self-created is outweighed by the argument that it meets the spirit of the ordinance or other requirements. The fact that it's oversized to begin with, he didn't design it, he didn't build it, he bought it, it's his. And that's where they started from. That was square one. So if you took a look at this, this is an R1E design. It would be oversized in an R1D, but the lot's bigger. The lot's bigger than the average R1D lot. The average R1D lot can be 2,500 square feet. Okay, but that's for a 50 by 125, and this is almost 60 by 135. So it's a little bit bigger. So I just want to make sure that, you understand that. So for a standard number, let me just go through these real quick here, or as quick as I can get it. For one, the special or unique circumstances and conditions exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, building involved, which are not generally applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the same district. This is the biggest lot on the block and the biggest house on the block. But it's on the biggest lot. Again, it was over the maximum house size. The thought process is based on the original architecture. They need the space to use the structure as it applies to 2022 standards, hence the bathroom. But it is the largest on the block. Are they asking for a lot? Well, when you take a look at the size of the bathroom, and you take a look at the porch, and you take a look at that space, you have to weigh that versus whether or not those are reasonable applications for the architecture. And again, they have reduced the scope of the project so that it's now in line with the front of the house and needs no variances. Originally, this needed 3 variances. and one of them was taken away. And then two, the variance will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the general welfare. I've had no adverse communications on this. We did have communications raised at the planning commission prior to downsizing, but since then, we've had none and none for this meeting. And for the lot coverage, there's been no adverse communications at this point. The planning commission appreciated the fact that the front of the house was brought in to be in line and no longer needed a variance. The house size for three, the self-created. This again becomes difficult because unlike on other projects, this is oversized before it starts. Again, you need to determine if the self-created is outweighed by the argument that it meets the spirit of the ordinance or the other requirements. You should take a look at the architectural design, what they're trying to accomplish with this, the goals of the plan, and the reasonableness of the request as it relates to the overall design. Then for the lot coverage, again, this was over, but again, this is an R1E district, which has smaller lot, but the percentage is the same. It's still 30%. You might want to pay attention to the plan and the overall goals here as well. And then four, a literal interpretation of the provision of this ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district under terms of this ordinance, and that the variance is the minimum necessary. So what are they really looking for here? They're looking for a bathroom, they're looking for an entryway, since by design of the house, that is the only entryway to the house that's practical. And then they're looking to square off the front corner of their house to gain back the room that they're devoting to the mudroom and the bathroom. And that's kind of where that's at. So for the house size, again, you leave them to their proofs. The lot is not really an outlier, but it is bigger than what they have, but it's not substantially. It's not like the case where in the other, where you had 50-foot lots and you had 100. Here you've got a 60-foot lot. But again, it's in a zone R1E district. So that's the thing where you have, where you can take a look at that. And again, the lot coverage is kind of easier to make in the standards. The space that's being requested squares off the front corner and no longer needs a front setback variance. And the dining room square off is approximately equivalent to the space that they're using in the existing house for the mudroom and the bathroom. If you have any questions, I'm sure that Mr. Ostroff or myself will do our best to answer them. And I'll leave this up if you have any questions.
Thanks, Hank. Before we move on to questions or comments, I'm going to open it up to public participation on this appeal. Hearing and seeing no one, I'm going to close public participation on this appeal. And I'm going to open it up to the board for questions or discussion.
So
Go ahead.
it would be great to see like maybe at this time of the night I need like pictures and not drawings. I don't know. It's a long day. The if you put it up on like Google Maps Street View, the front the only I was trying to look here, it's just the part that's like carved out is now going to be flush.
Correct.
Right?
If you look at that front elevation, that one right there, the right side of it where the shutters are, that window and that piece of siding there, which we really want to make brick, but there's no foundation there, that's all existing.
Okay.
We're bringing that left side where those three windows are, the two double hungs with the picture window, we're bringing that plane out. Actually, it still sits 4 inches behind to line up with the siding, and you can see that on the floor plan. But essentially, it's flush and not coming out any farther.
And is that how much? So that doesn't change that becomes lot coverage that wasn't lot coverage before.
Correct.
Even though it's the same amount of impervious surface because it's already got
Some of it, there is a porch, an existing porch that's kind of like a tunnel that you have to go through. Some of that is absorbed, where you can actually see it in the site plan a little bit better, but some of that is absorbed. So we're not the whole. In other words, the whole addition isn't all added 100% lot coverage.
right.
So there's
that's
portions
what I
of
was
it that are
saying.
kind of
So that of the additional square feet of house that you're asking for, how much of it is that front left?
We're adding maybe 200, a little over 200 square feet of additional lot coverage.
No, sorry, not lot coverage. That's the here. Let's see.
Maybe I don't understand.
337 square feet of house. Is that all there?
Is that
Is that where it all 337?
No, we're not adding 337. There's,
It's gonna be 337.
yeah.
Over.
Actually, you can see,
Or it's,
Hank, can you pull up A1?
you're only adding,
He's asking, is that,
A1, the.
is that where all the work
is
is?
that the only portion that's being added? That's
Correct.
the only addition,
Okay,
is that
so
front
it's
corner?
just
Just the front corner.
taking it and you're taking this part that's like
Adding and making
negative
it-
space, that's not, doesn't do anybody any good
Correct.
indoors and making it, bring it into the house.
Right, you can see it, I think the best is right there. So you see on the left side, that's the existing footprint. So you see the left there, you've
Okay.
got the porch, and so that would probably give you the best view right there.
Got it.
It's even, okay.
Right, so some of that porch is under, it's covered, existing.
Right.
So that's in lot coverage. The existing front door is under lot coverage. Some of that is getting absorbed into what the new, proposed mudroom is gonna be in the bathroom.
So this is what it is right now,
Correct,
and this becomes house,
correct.
and then you get porch out where they're,
The porch sticks out
sticks out a
further.
little bit, right?
Again, the homeowner's a rabbi, and he generally has 10 to 15 to 20 people every Friday night. A lot of them are older, a lot of them are elderly, so the bathroom is like a must if possible. He would really like to have the covered front porch, but if it's a deal breaker in terms of getting anything done, then we'll get rid of it. But he would prefer to have it.
So this is R1E,
This is our.
Correct.
and those are typically 50 by 100?
No, those are actually typical. You'll probably find as many 40 by 125s,
Okay.
and this is almost 60
So
by
it's like 1.5
135.
times that.
So, give or take.
I mean, at
But,
So
you know,
at
we're the-
7,800 square feet, what would that be R1?
Pardon me?
What zone would
What's the
78
comparable?
Yeah, like
Said
if this is
R1C.
60 by 135.
R1C
that's-
is over 7,000 square feet, R1D is over 6,000 square feet.
Okay, so 60 by 135 gets us to like 7,950 or something.
Yeah.
like that, right?
Yeah,
So
78,
73.
33.
it's an outlier in that sense. You do have these in the neighborhood, but the issue is that, where the lot coverage, I think where Ben might have been getting hung up on the lot coverage question was, the house is over on the lot coverage right now
But for R1E,
for R1E.
but
The
it,
lot coverage is the lot coverage for R1E, D, or C. It's still the same percentage, it's 30%.
but 30%.
Is it
Okay, so
non,
it's 30%.
It's 30%.
And it's a
Right.
measurement,
But-
that's- okay.
was there a variance or is it non-conforming when the ordinance was
It
created?
was non-conforming when the ordinance was
Alright.
created.
In my opinion, this is exactly what we're here for. This is a reasonable accommodation. Everybody should have a bathroom on their first floor. It's not an overreach. I see
The
absolutely
two
no
doors.
reason.
I'm sorry?
Kind of like a Jack and Jill, is that what it looked like on the, you can,
Yeah, well, so he has his in-laws stay
Yeah,
here
no.
overnight, so they have access, and then, but, during his Shabbat meal, then somebody can use the restroom and they don't
yeah,
have to go
I
up
think
or
that's
down.
great.
Yeah.
It's doing a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely, that bathroom's
Sorry,
gonna be used
go ahead.
a lot,
I-
yeah.
I'm just
Gotcha.
gonna say, to me, this is very simple. I don't see any reason why not to approve this.
I agree with him.
It's totally
Thank you.
in the spirit of why we're here.
It doesn't feel like you're over asking,
No.
overreaching, wanting more and more and more. Yeah, it seems very in the spirit of what we're here for.
Thank you.
What? Does that sound like a motion?
I'm gonna motion. I motion to deny it, actually. Just kidding, don't put that on the record, that was a joke.
So just so we're clear, we need motion to approve both variances.
Yes, and we.
Right.
Could be one motion.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it. I will make a motion to approve both variances.
You gotta
Go
use
ahead, Michael.
I will make a motion to approve both variances.
Last page, you want him to read it?
You gotta read it.
Yeah, come on, you can speak things, you can pronounce them incorrectly, but you gotta pretend that.
I never know to say the dash or the dot or the point.
I move to make a motion to
Yeah,
approve.
you said it, you moved. That's correct.
Move to grant the variance at 1335 Victoria for a variance from sections 40-4.03-R1A through R1E. One family district's D dimensional requirements maximum house size of 337 square feet, request to 2,872 where 2,535 is allowed. The house R1E zoned is currently 2,600 square feet, oversized currently for an addition to the house as it meets the standards for dimensional variance and generally meets the requirements, as well as variance from section 40-4.03.
Keep going.
R1A through R1E, one-family districts, D, dimensional requirements for a lot coverage of 35.3%, where 30% is allowed as it meets the spirit of the ordinance, would do substantial justice to the applicant and is not injurious to the surrounding properties.
Second.
Second.
Joe? All in favor?
Aye.
That was unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you.
Six,
Thanks.
all right.
Thank
Other
you.
business, Hank?
You want your drawing back?
We do not, at this point. I do anticipate that there will be a November meeting at this point. I do have something.
Okay, great, thanks. Opening it up to public participation. I see no one, I'm gonna close public participation and look for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Thanks, Joe. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Let me say hi, you know?